Just as 10th grade was ending, I realized that IIT JEE was the best option for me in India. So yeah, boards. I think we had a week's time to prepare for boards because the state in which I joined Narayana, I wasn't even sure if I'd get into any IIT at all.
Hi guys, this is Shreyansh Goyal and welcome to my YouTube channel. So currently I am working as a software engineer at Techion. So today we have a very special guest, that is none other than Hardik. So we will be discussing about his JEE journey. He has an All India rank 6 and we will be discussing a lot about it. So hi Hardik, how are you?
I'm good, Shreyansh. Thank you for having me. And how are you?
Yeah, I am also doing good. Could you tell me a little bit about your JEE journey, how it began and how you started to land up a rank 6 out of it?
Right. So, well, my JEE journey began in 11th grade with Velocity Group of Institutions in Hyderabad, and I eventually shifted to Narayana Group of Institutions, and I think they really played a major role in my journey to 6th rank as it were.
Okay. So this was your first attempt, right?
Yes, it was my first attempt.
So talking about the first attempt, like how did you handle boards and JEE together?
Right. So that is mainly that can be attributed to the fact that we picked an easier board in Hyderabad. So Narayana made all of its students register for IP, which is the state board, and that's a common practice in their industry, if you want to call it that. Because the state board exams are relatively easier to pass, I think, compared to CBSE exams, where we don't have the hassle of all those group projects and assignments and all that extra stuff. You just have a couple of subjects that you need to get the written examinations for. So yeah, boards. I think we had a week's time to prepare for boards. Narayana just let us go a week before the board exams, and they were like, "You can handle this on your own." And the syllabuses, the curriculum is mostly the same. So it's not a lot of work. It's just a model that we have to work on, the paper model.
So talking about JEE Advanced, like it's a dream for everybody to get a single digit rank. So you were also dreaming that you will be getting a single digit rank, or it just happened?
I think it was unexpected, if I'm being honest. Because the state in which I joined Narayana, I wasn't even sure if I'd get into any IIT at all. I don't know what the rank threshold for that is, but I wasn't in a great mood. And I was just happy, frankly, when I was in Narayana, I was just glad to be with some of the best students, to work alongside them, to discuss problems with them. And I told myself I'd be happy with any good rank that I got. A good rank being defined by below 100 or below 1000 at the very least.
Okay, so talking about like JEE Advanced, like how many hours did you dedicate for this exam, because this is one of the difficult exams out there?
Right, I think it was roughly 12 to 14 hours a day.
Okay, and talking about like the hours, like how did you divide the three subjects? Like did you study all the three subjects together, or did you study 2 subjects a day? Like how did you manage all the 3 subjects at the same time?
Right, so this was again entirely handled by Narayana's management. They forced us to study all 3 subjects a day, and it was usually like the day would be split into 7 sessions, of which 3 would be teaching, 1 for each subject, and 3 would be working, 1 for each subject, and 1 would be a self-study lesson that we had to take care of ourselves. So yeah, I worked with all 3 subjects at once.
Okay, so talking more about it, like can you tell me like when you became serious about this IIT thing and when you started preparing? Because taking coaching, like a lot of people are taking coaching, and coaching does help in some way, but we have to actually do self-study and we have to showcase our skills. So when did that begin?
Right, so I think I was serious about it towards the end of 10th grade. Just as 10th grade was ending, I realized that IIT JEE was the best option for me in India. So I started looking for colleges, and just before the start of 11th grade, you could say I was, in the coaching classes and picking up some of their tricks and tips that they would use daily once in JEE preparation.
Like I think the people say that IIT takes 4 years of preparation or something like that. So I think if we have a dedicated 2 years of preparation, that is also enough to crack IIT, right?
I agree. And in the 2 years of preparation that I had, like you said, dedicated preparation, right? Yeah, dedicated to the amount that it was inhuman sometimes. If you go and look at one of the top campuses in Narayana, and I hope this doesn't get quoted, but if you go look at some of the top campuses, they allow 0 distractions. I mean, you name the distraction that any teenage boy or any young boy would be into at the time, and they take it away. They don't give you TV, they don't give you, I don't know, there's TV, there's sports, you barely get any sports. and just social interactions. You have barely any social interactions. There's no question of going out to birthday parties or going out to movies with friends. The most you can expect out of those campuses is a break, a 3 to 4 hour break once in 2 weeks, which is what I was with. So yeah, if you look at it from the normal point of view of how any normal person works, like you're a working person and you have a day job and you have things outside of that job, like you go back home, you watch TV or something. That's the human thing to do. But yeah, the dedication in those campuses is just inhumane compared to the other things.
Got it. I think that is fine, but how would you manage, like, because there are some times that we have to study, and after the studying, we have to actually do some activities so that we can actually be relaxed for the day. So, what was your relaxing thing that you actually did after studies?
For relaxation, we had the most primitive forms of relaxation. That would be sleep. So in the 1 hour 10-minute lunch break that we used to get, 1 hour 30 minutes maybe, I try to finish lunch in like 10 minutes and try to take a bath in another 10 minutes, and the other hour I'd just be napping with my other friends who were trying to relax themselves. And then at 2 o'clock again it was back to the mill, as it were.
Okay, got it. And I think when you were doing coaching at Narayana, there would be some chapters or some things that would be marked as backlogs. So how would you handle backlogs? There would be some competitions and there would be also test series where you would be actually not performing good. So how did you handle these situations?
Right. So before I get into that, people talk about backlogs like you described them, not being good in a particular topic, and that becomes a backlog. Like I didn't practice the questions during kinematics, and now that's a backlog for me. We had real backlogs, by which I mean that we weren't even taught whatever was in the topic. If there were topics, because we shifted from velocity to Narayana midway. I say we because it was I and a bunch of other students. And so there were entire chapters that we had not covered in organic chemistry, in some of the most important chapters in math, like integration, organic chemistry. There was magnetism in physics, entire chapters that we hadn't covered. How did we manage those backlogs? So one was that Narayana provided us with early morning classes and late night classes, and yeah, so over there you have to give the credit to those teachers as well. They were there in the classroom at 5 a.m. as early as 5 a.m. and they'd be with us till like 11 p.m., sometimes 12 a.m., making sure we covered up those backlogs, the theory of those backlogs at least. And then we had the whole preparation schedule is split into 3 phases. There's phase 1, 2, and 3. So we had backlogs from phase 1, and they were covered up in phase 2. And phase 2 is just a quicker version of phase 1. And yeah, how do we cover them up? Like I said, we covered the theory up previously with those early morning and late night classes, and phase 2 was about practicing the questions. I would be lying if I said I didn't have any backlogs in phase 3. So yeah, phase 3 also helped cover up those ones.
And talking about in some mocks that you could not perform that well, so how did you deal with that?
Right, if I could not perform well. So it always boiled down to figuring out what the problem was, because they say no student is perfect, and no paper maker is perfect either. So sometimes we did have very shit papers. I hope that's not going to be censored, because there would be entire chapters, entire paragraphs in that question that were not in the syllabus. There would be some guy asking us, I don't know, I don't even remember the name of those equations, some complicated equations that weren't in the physics syllabus, or some absurd reaction from some esoteric organic chemistry book that we had never discussed. And so those papers you try to ignore and get over. Like if you can keep those esoteric reactions in your memory, great. If you can't, you let them go. And then there would be other papers where I would just genuinely mess up because I wasn't in the right state of mind. Like I'd make calculation mistakes, or I'd have a memory problem. And so whatever it was, I have a good friend who always says this even today, Shreyansh Goyal, and he says that whenever you get a question wrong, it's very important that you realize what the core reason of you getting that wrong was. Was it a reading mistake, or was it a memory thing? And the moment you just acknowledge that in your head, the moment you go, it was a calculation mistake, you would look out for calculation mistakes the next time you're doing the calculations. So it boils down to acknowledging what the mistake actually is, rather than shrugging it off as "Arey yaar, paper kharab gaya mera." Instead of doing that, you sit down with the questions and you figure out what went wrong.
Okay, as you mentioned that there were a lot of things that we needed to memorize in JEE. So talking about that, like there were some subjects that like chemistry and a little bit about physics that we had to memorize. So how did you deal with that? Like, were you good at memorizing, or how did you start memorizing nicely?
Right. I wasn't good at memorizing, contrary to what my 10th grade friends would say. So the key to memorization, I think, is, and I think my teachers would agree with this, is practice and spaced out practice. There's also something called active recall that one of my friends has told me about. So essentially, if it's something like in organic chemistry where you have tons of these reactions that you read in NCERT or you read in that fat book called JEE, you have to space the recollection out. So you revise it in January, revise it again in February, but you don't, how do you revise it? You don't just read through them. You sit down and you take a pen and you take a piece of paper and you try and write down whatever you remember. So that's trying to recall it on your own, and that works. And you need to keep doing it repeatedly. You're not Superman to remember it in one go. And another thing is building up the habit of fetching it from your memory. A lot of people in physics have this ego of मैं सब कुछ derive कर लूँगा, मेरे को fundamental formula आता है, मेरे fundamentals clear हैं, मेरे को कोई और formula रखने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. That's wrong, because they have a habit of deriving it during practice papers and practice questions. So in the final exam they're like, I can't remember it, because they haven't made an effort to remember it. So recalling, spaced out recollection, and building the habit of memorizing things.
And I think like these things are actually important, and it comes with practice. Like if you practice more and more, these will eventually come. Nothing can beat like practice. That is little bit you have to do hard work with some smart work. In JEEs, people tend to say that you should follow NCERT and everything comes from NCERT. But I actually see that NCERT is very underrated, because people tend to follow other books apart from NCERT. People don't want to study NCERT. Why is it so? And is NCERT helpful really for JEE Advanced or exams like IIT?
I think for subjects like physics and chemistry, maybe NCERT is good for the theory, like you said, and a lot of people ignore it, and that is something that they should look into. But for subjects or questions that require a bit of extra thinking, or problem solving skills need to be developed over time, I don't think NCERT really offers the equipment for that. It doesn't have the questions. All the questions in NCERT are very conceptual, if you ask me. Or they were used in JEE at one point, and now no one goes back to them. So yeah, for practice purposes and for questions that involve more thinking, you should look into other books. But then again, you shouldn't be jumping from book to book, like I did 10% of H.C. Verma and now I'm doing 20% of Irodov, and oh no, now I'm doing 10% of Pathfinder. So that's a problem.
I totally agree with you that NCERT should be followed for conceptual things. And talking more about it, like as you mentioned Irodov and H.C. Verma, so I actually also followed a lot of books for physics itself. So there are people that actually follow a lot of books for each subject. So what do you think, like what book should they follow? Because there are plenty of books now for each subject. What should be followed?
I think that's a very difficult question, and you'll need some industry experts to answer that. It wasn't really a problem for me, because once I joined Narayana, they compiled a lot of the books, and they sort of handpick the best questions out of them, and they give it to us in their material. So I never really had to face that dilemma of should I go with, I don't remember the book names for the example, but yeah, I never had to pick between two books. I always did the Narayana material. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about three subjects, was one of your subject weak? Because there are a lot of cases that one of the subject is weak for every candidate. Was it same for you?
Yes. Especially when I was in Narayana. When I moved to the end of 12th grade, I used to get butchered in math every week. And I think what's important there is the realization that if you want to get a good rank, which is what the campus wanted for us, you have to look after all three subjects. You can't let your ego in chemistry and physics blind you of your weakness in math. So that's important. You need to know that you need all three subjects to get a good rank.
So how did you overcome that, and like how did you be good at maths? Because maths was your weak subject, and how did you tackle that?
Right. The first step is acknowledging it, that I'm not good in math and it's a real problem. The second step, for math especially, there's no substitute for practice, like you said earlier. So I used to approach teachers, in math again, I won't be weak in vectors, say. Actually, I was weak in vectors, but let's not say that. So I narrow out which topics I was weak in, collect those topics and go solve questions specific to those topics. I think I had a lot of problems with complex numbers till the very end. So I used to do complex number problems almost every day.
Talking more about it, like, was there any inspiration for you to go to IIT?
Inspiration? Well, not inspiration to go to IIT per se. It's really the only option if you want a decent education in technology, in my opinion, and in the opinions of people I spoke to about this. I did have role models for hard work, at least, like my parents. You know, they were my role models to enter. When someone told me that it's going to be hard work, I was like, my parents have done a lot of hard work, and I don't think I'll back away from that because of that. So, my parents were definitely the reason that I thought I could handle this. Once I got into the whole thing of getting into JEE, you know, I obviously met a lot of people in the Narayana campus, at least, that became role models for me. So, and I think that's really a benefit. If you live with people that become your role models, you see someone waking up at 6 a.m., you're going to want to wake up earlier too, so that you can dedicate at least as much as he's dedicating to your studies. So yeah, initially my parents, and then when I was with all these geniuses in the Narayana campus, those guys became my role models too.
So talking about your IIT experience, how is it till now? Like, it's been 2 years since you joined IIT, and how is your experience till now?
Right, it's very competitive in academics at least, and other than that, I think the kids, the students, not the kids, the students are really looking to have fun. They're not the kind of guys you meet during your preparation who are just like, maths mein kitne hai, physics mein kitne hai. So they know how to have fun, but they also know how to study when it's time for exams, you know. I do wish that they wanted to study a bit before the exams as well, but to each his own. So there's that. There's also a lot of opportunities, as everyone must have said on YouTube, I suppose. You know, a lot of companies show up here and a lot of events like Tech Fest or Tech Meets. I've participated in one Tech Meet so far, so I think I'm allowed to talk on the matter. And just, you know, the variety of people you get to meet here, everyone chasing something different. It's a lot of fun.
People actually ask me this question, that does IIT tag matter? So actually talking a little bit about that, it actually matters because it actually gives you an exposure. A lot of people you interact with, you get that environment, competitive environment, and if you be at that environment, you will be learning a lot of things that will be very helpful in future.
Right, I agree, I completely agree. A lot of the times I have picked up things just because my friends know them, and it's eating me up inside that he knows how to write a regex for checking email IDs. I don't know that, so I'll go learn it. So this is good up to some extent, like you pointed out. I do want to caution people against paranoia, as one of my friends would say it again. You know, you shouldn't get to the point where अरे उसको ये आता है, उसको वो आता है, and you're just chasing what other people know. You know, college is a lot about exploring what you want to know, what you're into. So, you know, find your own regex pattern to learn, I suppose.
Okay, can you tell me, like, what would you be giving advice to the ones that are actually preparing for IIT or preparing for JEE Mains, JEE Advanced? What are the things that they should follow and they should keep in mind so that they land up in IITs and they have a good rank?
Right. So previously I used to say what I used to answer to this question was honesty, just honesty, you know. And I realized that honesty is a bit too idealistic of an answer. So what I mean by honesty is, you know, just be honest with what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. If you're weak in math, admit it. Which topics are you weak in? Find out, work on them. If you think you're leaving something, don't leave it out. Look back at it. So that was the old answer. I think the new answer I have for you today is honesty is still there. One other thing that I would like to add is that you try to get close to people who you think are working well or better than you, and you try to stay connected. That's how you stay up to date. You know, you ask him, like, what books are you solving, or how do you solve problems? What patterns are you following? Because everyone's in this together, and no one knows what they're doing. You know, because it's not like none of you have done JEE for the last 18 years or 20 years, so you don't know what the right way to do things is. But eventually you'll figure them out. Someone might have a really good way of solving math worksheets. You know, maybe he has a way of doing it. Someone might know what the best way to stay productive is. How did they get rid of their phone while they're studying? So you keep discussing these things and you find them out. You shouldn't feel embarrassed about asking your friends for things like these. And I think that's again another thing that I have to thank Narayana for. They develop an environment such that people are comfortable asking this to each other. I could walk up to anybody in Narayana and be like, dude, I'm having trouble concentrating in math class because, I don't know, I get distracted by the way the professor talks. What's your opinion on this? And he'll have a good laugh and he'll help me out with it. You know, that's important, having connections that help you.
Yeah, I think that is actually a great answer, because self-realization is also that actually is a great thing. It's a great habit. A lot of people don't have this habit, that they actually don't know what the problem is with them. So you have to first identify your problem with honesty. That is the first thing, and then you have to actually be connected and be a little bit social, so that you actually know a lot of things out there. And before like ending this session, can you tell me what was your success mantra?
Success mantra, it would have to be honesty, I suppose. Honesty and a lot of, what's the word? A lot of seriousness for whatever the teachers were recommending. I do know, I have seen some students who would be like, the professor doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm not overconfident, or I'm good enough in mechanics for JEE Advanced. It's like, no man, if the professor says you need to brush up on something, brush up on it. So yeah, honesty and seriousness towards whatever the professors say.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was a great session. People who will be watching this will be enjoying a lot, and they would be learning a lot from this session. It was great having you.
Thanks for having me.
और बस आज के लिए बस इतना ही था. अगर आप लोग ने ये वीडियो देखा है यहाँ तक, तो ये वीडियो को लाइक कर दीजिए, और अगर अभी तक चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर दीजिए और बेल आइकन को भी दबा दीजिए. चलिए मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट वीडियो में. थैंक यू गाइस.